know, the majority of my videos tend to be carrying out repairs where you don't need specialist tools, but we're getting to the point in my videos, if you have been following them regularly, where we're getting to the point where the jobs that we are going to be doing need a few special tools. But again, I'm going to try and minimise that for you, so that if you do need to go out and buy some tools, you're only going to buy the other one or two. So the last video we did, or the video before that, was about replacing a chain, where you needed a chain tool for that. We've been asked about cranks, so I thought I'd do a video on replacing cranks, removing cranks and taking them back off again, taking them off and putting them back on again. So we will need a few special tools for this. So the all important special tool you'll need is a crank remover. Now it does depend on what type of crank you've got, and this video is going to be based upon square taper and diamond tapered cranks. So this is a puller that removes the crank. As a kid, I used to try and use a chisel, my granddad used to get bits of wood and all sorts of stuff to get cranks off, and they came off eventually, albeit they would never be serviceable ever again. So this tool here, which will cost about £7 to £10, is a lifesaver. So if you do want to take your cranks off for whatever reason, even for cleaning, then this is a tool that you need. To go with that tool, you'll need a couple of spanners. This one in particular uses a 16 on one side and a 15 on the other. I suppose I've done that in case you only own one set of spanners, so you don't have to have two spanners the same size. Makes sense, really. On this particular bike, it's a 14mm socket that takes the crank off, so I've got a socket and ratchet here. You can buy an actual spanner that does it, but again, I'm trying to avoid buying specialist tools on these videos. So this is a simple socket set with a 14mm on the end of it. And you may need an Allen key. If you haven't got a 14mm socket in there, you'll have an 8mm Allen key. So you'll need an Allen key to get it off rather than the socket. And to take the pedals off, again, you can buy specialist pedal spanners, which are technically just really long spanners. So we're just going to use a normal 15mm spanner. So the first thing we're going to do is take off the pedals, because there's something I want to mention about that. So the rule lefty-loosey, righty-tighty applies here. So this will be lefty-loosey, so I'm going to put the spanner on, and I'm going to not smash my fingers to bits. There she goes. So nice and easy. The chances of yours being that slack, by the way, are pretty slim, so you might have to persuade them a little bit. With this being a training bike, they are quite loose, but that's the benefit of the proper pedal spanners. They're a lot longer, so you get a lot more torque out of them, a lot more power, but also they have the heads on funny angles, so you get a better pull on them. So this is what I wanted to mention. On the left-hand side pedal, the rule I've just told you, the lefty-loosey, righty-tighty rule, doesn't apply, and that's because if you were pedalling and it was lefty-loosey, righty-tighty, the pedal would naturally undo itself as you rode. So this pedal is actually a left-hand thread. So to get that off, we have to tighten it. So you'll notice on this one, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go righty-tighty, and that brings it off. And no matter what your bike is, it'll have a left-hand thread pedal. Now putting them back on, if you haven't paid attention to the pedals, there is a bit of a hint as to which pedal is which. And I'll show you that now. By hint, it's a massive hint. So you've got left and right there, and if for whatever reason you've either got an Allen key or this is rusty and you can't see it, the left hand pedal will have like a serrated edge on it. So see how that one's smooth? That one's got like a serrated edge on it, which tells us that's the left pedal. So that's a way to know. Every day is a school day. So while I'm on this side, I might as well take the crank off. So we're going to use, on this one you use a flat blade screwdriver, and that pops this little plastic cap out. Sometimes you have to go in from the side, sometimes the Allen key. And as I mentioned, on this particular bike, because I'm well aware of these bikes, it's a 14mm socket. So again, that just slackens off in the normal way. This isn't a left-hand thread, this is a normal threaded crank arm. And this one has a nut. Yours might bring a bolt out with it rather than a nut, but this particular one has a nut. And I'll take this arm off to show you. And there you go, this actually has a bolt, not a nut. So it's pulled the bolt out. Some of them will have a nut and leave a thread in there. And then this tool is a tool that fits crank arms. These threads are a standard, so they always fit in here. So you screw that in there like that. And again, with the 15mm spanner, you just give that little nib. Again, these arms are aluminium, so don't over tighten them, it'll pull the threads out. Just do it till it stops. And I just need this 16mm. And what this does is it actually pushes against a spindle inside, and because that's attached to the crank arm, it draws the arm off. So we're going to, it'll fight you a little bit at first, and then you'll feel it go. And there we go, simple as that. Fantastic tool. And because there's no load on it, it'll just unscrew. I mentioned square taper and diamond taper. Both are interchangeable as long as they're in a pair. So this is a diamond taper, so you can see the way the square is orientated makes it what we call a diamond taper. If it was square taper, it would be like that. So you can swap them over, you can put diamond taper on square and square taper on diamond, but you must change with a pair, otherwise your pedals will be offset. So the other side will be diamond taper too. So let's go to the other side. Now to make life easier on this side, I suggest you put it in the small chainring. If you've only got one chainring, then it doesn't really matter, but it makes it a little bit easier if you put it on the smaller chainring before you take it off. And again, you take this plastic cover off. 14mm spanner. Again, this isn't left-hand thread, it's just a normal thread on both sides for the crank. And this side comes off in exactly the same way. There we go, and again, a bolt, not a nut. If it was a nut, you could still use the tool, exactly the same. You just have to wind it in a little bit further so that the nut that's inside there went inside there. Again, that just screws onto there, nice clean thread. If you take your plastic cover off, and then that cover keeps everything in there clean, there's a bit of dirt in there, then give it a clean out, a bit of brake cleaner, even a bit of GT85 TF2, because these threads have to get a nice purchase on there. If there's a bit of grit in there, it'll stop it. So just give it a clean out, a little bit of toothbrush or something like that will do the job. Just make sure you don't put the toothbrush back in the bathroom. Again, we'll wind that back in. And this crank arm will come off exactly the same as the other side. Then you should see it'll be a diamond taper, the same as the other side. It's worth mentioning that on these tools, there we go, then it'll bring the chain off. And there we go. So it's worth mentioning that on these tools, some of them will use different things. Some will have a socket on the end, some might use a 15, some might use a 17, a 14, whatever the tool is. Just be sure that your spanner fits correctly when you try it. If I were to put a 16 on there, you'll see it's a bit loose. It would work, but it's a bit loose, and if it was a bit tight, it'd damage the chain. The tool, sorry, so just make sure that you use the correct tool that fits. And as you can see there, we've got two diamond tapered arms. So again, if we want to swap those over for square arms, it will be fine. You can just buy a left-hand arm, but you will need to know that measurement, which is 170. A lot of mountain bikes are 170, 175s. And again, you'll need to know whether it's a diamond or a taper, a square taper, sorry. And then if you match it up, you can just change one arm if you need to do that. So if you were to be working on the bottom bracket now, you would need another tool to get this bottom bracket out in particular, because it's a sealed unit. But I'm not going to go through that now, that's for a different video if we're going to do about bottom brackets. There's a lot of different bottom brackets around, so that's when you start to have to buy 3 or 4 different tools depending on what bottom bracket you've got. So all we're going to do, we're just going to assume that we've took this off for a clean and a check. I would give that a clean in there as well, but obviously that is a sealed unit, so all you're doing really is just keeping the teeth clean where the tool would locate if you did need to get off at a later date. So we're going to pop this back on now. And again, it doesn't really matter where that one goes, because as long as you get the other one set opposite, it's perfectly fine. So some people put grease and things on there. Don't. Just make sure these are nice and clean and dry. If you put grease on them, what can happen is you can force the crank up the shaft a little bit too far, and you cause it to splay out, and then that's when they start to wobble and come loose. Incidentally, if you are taking your arms off, just double check on the inside that the inside's still nice and square. If this has started to splay out and open, it's because either it's been too tight, someone's put some grease on there and it's forced its way up there a little bit, or it's been ran loose. Once these are ran loose, if that's rounded off a little bit and it's opened out, it's for the bin, because no matter how tight you do it, it'll just come loose again as you ride. something we see a lot of again. So again, 14mm bolt back in. Fight me a little bit. And then it goes. And as always, I'm just going to nip it to make sure that I'm happy with it, same as I did brake pads, same as I've done with a lot of items. I always just give them a little nip to make sure that they're on, check that they're adjusted correctly, and then I tighten them up. So again, this crank needs to be opposite. There was actually an advert for the Royal Navy where it was saying if you can fix a bike, you can fix whatever it is, and he actually had the crank arms on wrong. He had the crank arms on like that. So you can't fix a bike.
Nope.
So yeah, they go opposite each other. And again, I'll just work from this side so the camera can see, but I'm just going to put that back in again. It does seem like a very long bolt, but it does have a very important job to do, which is why it's got plenty of thread. So again, left hand pedal has either the little sort of segregated bits on, or it'll say L on the end of it. And to fasten that, we go the wrong way, which on this pedal is lefty loosey. So this one goes in lefty loosey, like that. And you can cheat a little bit and do that. You'll notice a little bit of grease on these pedal threads, and it's well worth putting on if you are going to be looking after your own bike. It's called it's copper slip or copper grease. It's not for bearings, it's just for interference fit things, so it's things that go together and stay still. They don't rotate or anything like that. So copper grease on there is a fantastic way of putting it in, especially with that being steel and these arms being alloy. If they weren't moved for a long time and they got wet a lot, they tend to fuse together and then you can never get them out. And if you do get them out, even with a big pedal spanner, you tend to damage the threads. So a little bit of copper grease can really go a long way. Don't go daft with it because it goes everywhere. If you get it on your clothes are ruined. And again, with pedals, all they need is a nip. People really give them over tightening, you really don't need it. Again, there is a tool that will tell you how tight to do things called a torque wrench. And again, that's another special tool that you would need. And if it were a customer's bike that I was working on, I'd be looking at doing that. I'd be getting the correct torque settings and setting them to torque, along with every nut and bolt on the bike really. But again, this is about home mechanics, this is about just doing it yourself. So now I know that's okay, I'll give that another tighten. So again, this isn't really tight, but it is tight. About as tight as you would do your bike wheels if it had wheel nuts on. Oops. Here we go. And the last thing we do is pop the dust caps back on. Like that. And on this side too. You can give those a wiggle if you want to. But yeah, it's good to go. So, that was a quick whistle stop tour, how to remove your crank arms for whatever reason. It might be that you swap them over and put some different ones on, and maybe you're taking them off for inspection or just to take them off for a clean. So I hope it's been useful. Again, that does apply just to square taper or diamond taper cranks. If you've got a hollow tech crank or an IS type crank, that's a slightly different procedure, which again, if you need to know how to do that, drop us a line. I'll find a bike that's got one of those cranks on and I'll do the job for you. As always, thanks for watching, stay safe, see you again soon.